Okay, so here is a look at our draft expert Ryan Wilson's updated mock draft with projected trades in there, including the Colts moving up to 1 to select Bryce Young. Ryan has the Bucs moving into the top 10 from 19 to look for Tom Brady's replacement in Kentucky QB, Will Levis. Now let's go ahead and bring in our quarterback, Brady Quinn. He's joining us in studio today. Brady, we saw the Colts move up on that big board with the Bears, trading with the Bears. Who could be potential other dance partners maybe with Chicago there for that number 1 pick?
There's a lot that are in the mix right now because I think if you look at that top 10, there's a number of teams you can make the case are going to be looking for a new quarterback. And obviously, as Ryan has thrown out there, the Colts are definitely one of those teams in consideration. I think you obviously look at the Houston Texans sitting right there at number 2. They can stay put, take a player like C.J. Stroud, or they can trade up to the number 1 spot and make sure they control and get exactly who they want. If that's Bryce Young or whatever the quarterback that they're looking for, they're a possibility there. The Las Vegas Raiders as well, they're obviously moving on from Derek Carr, and maybe they don't want to have to give up a bounty of picks to trade for Aaron Rodgers. Then you got the Carolina Panthers, too, still there in the top 10, along with the Atlanta Falcons. So you could make the case any one of these 5 teams could be a buyer for that number 1 spot in the Chicago Bears. The last thing I'll just throw out and say is this. This is a huge offseason for general manager Ryan Poles for the Bears. They have the most cap space of any team right now and the number 1 overall pick. He obviously has made the big decision of saying, I'm not going to try to move on from Justin Fields and stay put and draft a quarterback to replace him. I'm going to work with what I have and try to build out around him. That's a huge nod of confidence for a general manager that didn't draft Justin Fields, but seen him grow and progress over the course of the past couple seasons.
Yeah, and of course his legs being the most electric part of his game. We'll see if the passing follows suit. All right, it looks like Bryce Young and Jalen Carter will skip the workouts there in Indy this week for the Combine. Big deal, not a big deal for 2 guys who are projected to go maybe 1 and 2.
This is not a big deal, and this gets so blown out of proportion. And let me just take you behind the scenes what's happening right now. Players now for the first time, now some of these guys had some marketing agents during their time in college because of NIL. They haven't had contract agents, football agents, guys who are now advising them in what they should do moving forward. And when you're a guy like Bryce Young or Jalen Carter, you're not trying to build up on top of your draft stock because you're already at the top of it.
Right.
So you're trying to maintain where you're at. For Bryce Young, he had an AC shoulder joint during the course of the season. There's no reason for him to go to the Combine and throw if he doesn't feel like he's ready, or just if he wants to give himself some more rest and then have a better showing at his pro day. Everyone knows what he's capable of. Him throwing at the Combine is not going to improve his draft stock. Same thing with Jalen Carter. Anyone who watched the tape of this young man over the past 2 years when they won back-to-back national championships, they know he's the best player overall prospect, in my opinion, in college football. He's not going to do anything at the Underwear Olympics that's going to change that in anyone's mind, in my opinion. So he's there for medical. They're there for interviews. Check that box. That's all you need to be there for. You go through your pro day, some private workouts, which we all forget is the most important piece to these teams, is when they come work you out individually and they're the team that can draft you. Not this made-for-TV event that's now become the NFL Combine.
Made for TV. You know, that's good for us, though. That's good for us.
It's good for us. It's not great for the athletes always.
All right, so you mentioned Young. You mentioned Carter here. A lot of people obviously have Young going number 1 because he's a quarterback. But Carter, the better overall prospect in your mind?
Yeah, to me. I mean, obviously with Bryce Young, there's no doubts in my mind as far as what he is as a quarterback. You just worry about the durability because of his size. And that's something that he can't change. He's played with his whole career. But still, when you look at him as a prospect at the next level, you do have to take that into consideration. With Jalen Carter, there are no concerns. There are no worries. Him and Will Anderson, to me, are the next 2 most bulletproof prospects in this draft class. I think when you look at what they've done on tape so far, their measurables, who they are as people and their character, those 2 guys right now I feel most comfortable with as far as the top 2 prospects. Then you can start talking about some of the quarterbacks too. However, again, we're talking about quarterbacks, so that premium always gets placed on them. That's why we push them ahead of some of these defensive players that I think overall are more solidified prospects.
Now, we're going to get to the rest of the quarterbacks in this group, especially in the first round, a little bit later. But I do want to ask you about running backs because it's not the trend now to see running backs always go in the first round. But do you think Bijan Robinson out of Texas is a guy who's definitely deserving of one of these top 32 picks?
No doubt about it. I think when you look at his skill set, and a lot of running backs have this skill set too, and it's not just Bijan Robinson. Jahmyr Gibbs falls in that category from Alabama. These guys can run, they can catch, they can do everything you're looking for, and you can get them now in the first round for potentially up to 5 years at a pretty economical price. And so if you're the New York Giants, for example, who are potentially moving on from Saquon Barkley, and we need someone who's got a similar skill set, step right up Bijan Robinson. He's got the vision. He's got the big home run playmaking ability. He can catch the football out in space and make something happen. He's a good blocker. Now, he didn't get as much attention as Saquon Barkley did, but go look at his yards per attempt average. Go look at his yards per game average in comparison to Saquon Barkley. He was just as impactful of a player. So if you're the Giants right now and you're saying, well, how do we replace Saquon Barkley? You're staring at him right there in Bijan Robinson.
Now, Ryan has him as a number 7 running back. You just mentioned the Giants. Anywhere else in the draft that you
7th overall prospect.
7th overall prospect, overall player, yeah. But where do you see him possibly falling in the draft?
I don't see him getting outside the first round. It just depends on what team is looking for him at that spot. If you're a team that's looking to take a running back and you're somewhere in the top 12, you're probably looking up at everyone else and saying, who wants to trade up to take, whether it's a wide receiver, which it's a good draft class. Yeah. There's not a ton of depth at that, so they might be looking at some of those top guys and saying, I want to trade up to make sure I get a Quentin Johnson so I don't miss out on the opportunity to get one. A cornerback potentially, tackle, all those positions where they hold a little extra value because it's become such a passing league. You trade back, accumulate more draft picks, then you're able to get that running back that you're looking for that's going to impact your roster.
Ryan Wilson has 3 tight ends in his top 25. You've got Michael Mayer, Darnell Washington, of course, out of Georgia, Dalton Kincaid as well. For you, how do these 3 guys shake up?
Well, Michael Mayer to me is the best prospect, and all bias aside, it's just put on the tape.
Right.
He's the most complete player when you're looking at his ability to not only run block, but also release out, make clutch catches, contested catches, route running ability. Now, he's not as fast as Dalton Kincaid, and he's not as big as Darnell Washington. And that's some of the things that those guys have as far as extraordinary talents. But he's going to have a very long, successful tight end. The comp that I've had for him is another Domer, Cole Kmet, who's now with the Chicago Bears, who's probably not as utilized as he could be. But I think Michael Mayer is easily going to transition in the league. He'll be a starter day one. He'll be a starting tight end and Pro Bowl caliber tight end for the entirety of his career. In regards to Kincaid, that's a player that you're going to look at and say, we can find some mismatches with his speed. He should be somewhere in the 4.6s, at least that's what he looks like on tape. Great catch radius, good hands, he's good in traffic. It's crazy to think too, Mike, he really got to shine because of Brant Keithy, their other starting tight end who got hurt this year, where Kincaid then stepped up and was elevated into the main role there at Utah. So without that injury, who knows how this would have worked out. And then finally, Darnell Washington. You will not find another prospect with the same type of skill set as far as size, but ability to move at that size. Darnell Washington could be, a tight end at 6'7", 270 for 15 years if he wants. He's got the ability to run block. He's got the ability to catch out in space. He could throw on another 30 pounds and be a Jason Peters and play tackle for 15 years. Like, he can do whatever he wants. He's got that much ability. So I'll be curious to see how the NFL talent evaluators see him. But you want to look for a guy who can kind of have that Gronk-type impact, just a huge frame and a massive bully out there. Darnell Washington's that player.
The measurables on this guy are
ridiculous.
Insane.
Yeah.
It looks like a video game player that you build at home when you're like, you know what, I just want a tight end that's going to dominate in Madden today.
Any quarterback that gets Darnell Washington drafted to him, if he indeed does stay at tight end, which I think he will.
Either way.
but you can just go ahead and put that little starry-eyed emoji, the heart emoji, like they're looking at him the whole time. That's your best friend. They're going to love throwing to that big frame.
All right, speaking of those quarterbacks, let's talk about 2 guys who are a little bit polarizing in this draft, both Will Levis out of Kentucky and Anthony Richardson out of Georgia. Levis isn't in Ryan Wilson's top 25 prospect list, but we do see him a lot getting picked in the top 10. Why is that?
Well, I think he's got very similar to Anthony Richardson, some inconsistent tape. You see some inconsistencies with his accuracy at all 3 levels, short, intermediate, and downfield. But he was dealing with a lot of things this season, and that's not to make excuses for him, but the offensive line play wasn't great. His best player was in the backfield. Chris Rodriguez missed some time this year. you see some inconsistencies too, some drops, but and different coordinators throughout the course of his time at Kentucky, which obviously played a factor. I mean, they moved on from Rich Scangarello after 1 year this year calling plays, so clearly that wasn't it in Lexington. I would just say this, though. If you have Anthony Richardson as part of your top 25, you probably should have Will Levis, because Will Levis had a little better tape than Anthony Richardson. Now, I don't know that he has as high a value as far as arm strength, athleticism, but they're pretty close. Like, those two, to me, are the two most freaky-ish athletes at the quarterback position with these unbelievably strong arms. I mean, if I was Will Levis, you have the opportunity to throw at the combine, you throw because you want everyone to see how strong your arm is compared to everyone else. That's where you increase your draft stock. That's why a guy like Anthony Richardson is participating at the combine, because every single talent and scout evaluator is going to watch him throw and go, did you see what we just saw? I mean, literally, he is going to steal the show, and when he's going to run fast, and everyone's going to look at him and say, I want to be a part of whatever they can mold this young man into at the next level, because it can be something special.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that's kind of the opposite of Bryce Young. Bryce Young really can't help his stock, but these two guys certainly seem like, you have a good showing there in Indy, and things could really move for them.
Yeah, you're trying to kind of get them to forget about some of the tape that you put out. I mean, that's the reality. As much as there's some jaw-dropping tape that you're going, holy cow, look at that throw, look at that play by Anthony Richardson, there's also times where you go, you might not be ready yet. And even for Will Levis, too, you see some of that. So I think there's going to be some times where you say, we're trying to be here to remind you of my raw skill set that I have, that you can mold into being a perennial Pro Bowl caliber quarterback and a guy who can go win you a Super Bowl, because they have those extraordinary skill sets, and that's what everyone's looking for. They're not looking for a guy who can do anything ordinary consistently well. They want somebody who can do something that no one else in the league can stop. You look at a Josh Allen, for example, because he's the rave. Every time you see him play, you go, well, who's going to be able to stop him running the football? Who's got as strong an arm as his? That's what they're looking for. These guys have some of those similar traits.
All right, so it's only Monday. Has anyone busted out the old Brady Quinn combine stuff yet?
Oh, no,
Pro Day
I hope
stuff? Not yet?
Not.
Okay, don't fear.
No.
It's not happening yet.
That's why I'm not going to come in the rest of
All right,
I told Jack, our producer, I was like, this is the only day you're going to give me if you're going to bring out the old combine stuff.
Jack, come on.
It's in the archives. You can't even see it. It's not even in HD anymore.
It's a 4x3 on YouTube. Brady Quinn, thank you so much for your insight, as always. Now, for more on the draft, reminder to check out the With the First Pick podcast. Ryan Wilson, Rick Spielman, and Josh Edwards. Last week, they went through the entire first round, projecting each pick to see who's going to your team. Check them out at cbssports.com or wherever you get your podcast.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.